Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Ionic Show. I'm Vivek Mano, Product Marketing Manager at Ionic, and today we're hosting a special version of the show and trying a new format this time around for our launch event. It's a bit of a throwback, really. Our teams are incredibly busy at the moment, so I wanted to be careful with their time, and we're going to take the opportunity to look back on the past few months to talk about what we've been working on, and then let our product managers and founder get right back to what they're building today. We have leaders from our product team in attendance. We'll give them the chance to highlight what's going on in the world of Ionic. We have Mike Hardington behind the scenes as well, helping everything run smoothly. Say hey, Mike.
How's it going, everyone?
Thanks for doing this, Mike. And lastly, we have our founder and CEO, Max Lynch, with us to kick things off.
Hello. How's it going?
Hey, Max, good to have you here. Let's jump right in. Now that we settled into 2022, can you give everybody a quick update on what 2021 was like for Ionic?
Yeah. So we had the best year in the company's history by far. We brought on a ton of awesome customers, shipped a bunch of new features. So on the open source side, we had some huge releases. As many of you know, we shipped Capacitor 3 earlier in the year, which was the biggest update to Capacitor since we rolled that out. Ionic 6, one of the best releases of Ionic ever, brought tons of new components, things like the bottom sheet, updated datetime picker, just really a lot of polish as well to the project. And then we rolled out Ionic Portals, which is a really new and exciting product for us that you're going to be hearing a lot about today. That's essentially a micro front ends product for mobile. So it's the first thing we've ever built that is kind of targeted actually at native developers, where they can take an existing native app and then use Ionic Portals to bring in all these micro experiences, these micro front ends into their app and enable lots of different teams at the company to all contribute to a single app. And so that's been a really kind of a new experimental product for us that has really taken off. That was pretty significant last year. And then on the business side, we're nearing 400 enterprise customers. The business is super healthy. The teams of over 80 people. So people don't always realize that there's a real business behind Ionic. We actually generate revenue and have a strong business, and all of that that business health goes back into the open source work that we do. So being able to fund work on Capacitor and Ionic and projects like Stencil, it all comes because we've been able to build like a very healthy business, and there's kind of this nice symbiotic relationship between the customers that we have that are generally building the most complicated, high scale, high intensity apps. And that's where we focus actually generating revenue from those customers. But then that goes back into the work we do on the open source side that the community benefits from. So we're purely in the business of mobile. Mobile is the only thing that we do, right? Like we don't have an ads business. So we don't make most of our money from ads. We just happen to do mobile on the side. We are 100% a mobile company. And so that's something our customers love because they just can't get that from anywhere else. So things are going really well on the business side.
I mean, and just to boast a little bit too, you mentioned something that's really unique. And while Ionic is best known for the open source SDK that we provide, we're profitable. If people who build Ionic, they're going to continue to see Ionic out there. It's not going to go away anytime soon.
Right. There is a real business behind this. It is sustainable. It is growing quickly. We have a lot of full-time people that we're able to employ working on this awesome technology people love, and then all these add-ons around it. So really interesting company in the space and project in the space. I think most people they don't realize this. Like if you go and compare other options in the space, like there's really no one like Ionic, right? Like we have fully dedicated people working on this technology. We sell portions of it to enterprises, maybe new features that only enterprises need, like integration with Microsoft Intune, which is something that you only use if you're in the enterprise. But then we can work back on the open source stuff. So really interesting business. You can actually call us if you need help with anything. Imagine Google or Facebook doing that. Like they don't do that at all. So being able to actually have a phone number that you can call. We've had situations where we fixed an issue for customers over a weekend. And, if that was any other project, you'd be waiting in line on GitHub, right? Like it's just a very different experience with Ionic. And I'm proud of that. I think one of the things that we have is this amazing customer support, basically experience that no one else is doing. Like I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, that's fantastic to hear. Max, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit because you have such a unique perspective on the market and what's going on. I'm going to ask you to tap into your crystal ball in just a second. But looking back on 2021, are there any trends that you thought would take off but just didn't in 2021? What's your thought, doing a little retrospective?
Yeah, I think the one trend that always feels like it's going to take off this year, it's kind of like desktop Linux. It's
Right.
always the year of desktop
This is
Linux.
the year of
Like
it.
this is, but it kind of creeps up on you over time, like Linux has certainly done. I think progressive web apps are that thing. People have been talking about PWAs for many years now, and we've done a bunch of work to support PWAs. Like when we launched Capacitor, the first versions back in 2018, one of the biggest things that we did is added first-class progressive web app support. So it's been a long time. And I think one of the things that remains true to this day, which is why I think Capacitor is growing so quickly and so popular, is that when teams have the option of deploying to the web and to app stores, they want to do both. And they certainly want to be in the app store too. And if they use a technology like Capacitor with Ionic, they have that optionality. They don't have to choose one or the other. This is something that is probably foreign to native developers because they don't have a choice of building a web app. They built a native app. They can only deploy the app store. But I would say for teams that want the option to have an app in the app store, a place that customers and their users know to go to install apps, it's very familiar to them. It's hard to beat something like Capacitor because you can also take that same app and deploy it to the web as a progressive web app. So I would say that one hasn't really quite taken off as much as I had expected, just because if you don't have to make the sacrifices to deploy as a PWA, you can build a app in Capacitor and get full native access, but still be able to do a PWA. Like you're probably going to want to do that.
Looking forward, then, what trend are you most excited about in 2022? Is it PWAs? Is this the year of PWAs? You have something else on your mind?
Well, I'm always excited about PWAs, and I think we will continue to be excited about them. But really, I think this year, the biggest trend that we see is this trend of micro front ends, and specifically in mobile. And it's not just us. If you're in the kind of high-end enterprise analyst space, like everyone's talking about micro front ends and micro experiences like Gartner and whatnot. And I think what's happening is the realization that having a single team doing anything when it's as important as like a mobile app experience just doesn't work, right? There aren't enough developers who know, say, like if you're building a pure native app, there aren't enough developers that you can hire to build all the features that you need for your pure native app if you're writing in Swift or Java. And you've got all this history of web experiences that you've been building. You're building new ones all the time, and it makes a lot more sense to try to bring those into the existing app and have a really nice experience that way. So micro front ends are absolutely exploding. This year is going to be huge for it. We're already seeing that with like the adoption that Portals has had and the interest Portals has had. So that's what I think 2022 is the year of micro front ends, specifically with mobile, which Portals is pioneering. Frankly, we're the leader there.
Just out of curiosity, I mean, micro front ends, I like to think of it as kind of a more generic architecture decision and team decision. Where do you see web components fitting in there? Because that does seem to be coming up a little bit more in our discussions.
Yeah, I think web components are probably the best vessel for taking like either a component or a micro web experience and deploying it anywhere. So I think it's the right API wrapper or abstraction, if you will, because you can deploy it anywhere the web runs. Versus if it was like a React component, well, you'd have to have a React host in order to run it. And that's just extra work and more dependencies and more restrictions. So you might as well target a web component because it'll run anywhere the web runs. And I think that's really the benefit to the web component format is it's just the best, most widely compatible way to take JavaScript and make it executable by the browser through nothing more than an HTML tag.
I appreciate it. And I know we're hard at work with our stencil project on that front, so I'm curious to see what comes out this year. Thanks for the introduction, Max. I really appreciate it. I've got a lot more questions for you, but we're going to get back to you at the very end. For now, I'm going to turn it over to our product team and dive just a little bit deeper. So on the Ionic show today, we have Liam DeBeasy, team lead for Ionic Framework. We also have Dallas James, product manager for Capacitor, Josh Thomas, product manager for Portals, and Matt Necco, product manager for Appflow. But right now I've got Liam on the screen. Thanks for being here, Liam. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
To start things off, for those who don't know, the last time we saw Liam on screen, Liam actually hit his hand on his desk waving goodbye to folks. So I've got to ask, how's your hand doing, Liam?
I made a full recovery. Luckily, it really hurt. Really hurt. But I made a full recovery. So
I'm super glad to hear that. So yeah, in that last webinar, you actually talked about Ionic 6 shipping. And I'm curious, what's the community feedback been so far?
Overall, it's been really positive. So we shipped it in, I believe, early December of 2021. So we've had a few months of just, polish. The team has been really hard at work fixing some of those higher priority bugs and some of the, smaller bugs as well. So we've given it that nice bit of polish over the past few months. We've also gotten a lot of feedback for areas where we can improve. So we shipped, a new date time component, a new bottom sheet component, accordion, and lots of other things. We've gotten a lot of feedback for things that we can do to improve those components. So right now we're really hard at work on, adding new features to daytime. How can we make that even better than it already is? V6 was really, really great for daytime and bottom sheet, but there's more we can do. So overall, it's been really positive. People are excited. I'm excited to see all the things that people have been building with these components and all the new and interesting ways that they're using our technology. But definitely looking forward to the future where we can enhance those features even more.
I've got to ask you, out of all the things you shipped with V6 and what you're working on, what's your favorite new release you've made in V6?
Probably bottom sheet. I know the webinar with Mike a few weeks ago. He said his favorite was date time, and he said I was wrong, but I think I'm right. And bottom sheet is the best feature. Okay. And the reason is that the swiping behavior is just, it feels native. You can have it look however you want. You can style the header, the content, the footer. You can change the colors. You can change the font sizes. You can do whatever you want. But no matter what you do, it's still going to feel native. And you get that experience right out of the box. Developers don't have to do any tweaking. It just works. And I think that's one of the things that I really like about bottom sheet.
All right. That's good to know. I think that debate's going to continue, but I'm going to keep asking that question every time, and we'll see where we land as a company. I've got to ask now, what's coming out? What do you see? V6 shipped, like you said, early December 2021. I'm sure everybody's asking you, when 6.1? What's next? That's always the question. So what's on the horizon for you and the team?
Yeah, so two big things right now. We are working on an Ionic 6.1 release. We are mid-development. I don't really have any demos to show right now, but the stuff that I've seen so far is really, really exciting. Lots of updates to date time, bottom sheet, and more. So again, we're hard at work on that. Hope to have more to share on that pretty soon. The other thing that we're working on is we're working on a lot of documentation updates. So the Ionic Docs site is great, but there's a lot of places where we can improve. So one of the things that we're working on is what we call a component playground. And so the idea is when you go to a component, say date time, you get the code, you get the, all the documentation, you can read through it. But what really people want is they want to just see how it looks. They want to try it out. They want to see, how is it supposed to look? How is it supposed to behave? When I use this property to customize it, what changes? And right now you don't really have that. You have to start up your own Ionic app. You have to copy and paste in code and tweak it until you get it to what you think is correct. But really what would be better is if you just went to the doc site and it was right there. You could see it. You can copy the code. And so we're working on that playground right now. Again, we're deep into development. What I've seen so far is really, really amazing. I think people are going to be excited. So the idea being you can go to the date time docs. You can see what date time looks like. You can toggle between iOS and material design mode. You can switch on dark mode. You can even get the copy and pastable code for each framework. So you can get Angular code, React code, Vue code, Vanilla.js. You'll be able to click a button and it'll open up a StackBlitz. So if you want to customize it right then and there, you can go into StackBlitz and do that. It's going to be a really, really awesome new addition to the documentation. Long time coming. And I think people are going to be really happy with that. So keep an eye out. We have more on that soon too.
Docs Playground. That sounds awesome. Uh, Liam, that's a fantastic update for what's going on with the Ionic framework. Anything else you'd like to add?
Keep an eye out. We have a lot of stuff planned for 2022 and beyond. A lot of stuff that I can't talk about right now, and I really want to, and I have to fight the urge, but keep an eye out. We have a lot more planned.
Liam, thanks so much. Liam's our team lead for Ionic Framework. Thank you so much for the update. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. So we have some other teams here that you might not know the names of, but I'm going to tell you actually the official names of our upcoming product manager titles. And we have Dallas James here, who's product manager of our web native products. That covers capacitor and some integrations. Thanks so much for being here today, Dallas.
Hey, Vivek, thanks for having me on today.
I've got to ask, you're web native. Talk to me about that title, because I think it's the first time we're talking about it publicly.
Yeah, so the web native team as it exists is a fairly recent team that's been created here at Ionic. And really the goal of the web native team is to focus on that exact experience, right? Anyone who is using web technologies to build a native experience. And that's kind of where we came up with that name. So that's a lot of using the tooling of Capacitor. It's how Capacitor works. It's the entire developer experience around that. It's making sure that the plugins exist in the ecosystem that are necessary. Really, my goal as the product manager of the web native team is to ensure that developers using web technologies to build native apps are able to be successful in what they do.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Dal. So it sounds like I'm going to dive into two pieces here, capacitor and integrations, but let's start with what's new. What do you have to share with us today? What's everybody going to get excited about?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that people are going to be excited about is the new core plugin that we're adding. So longtime users of Capacitor know there's a set of core plugins that the Ionic team maintains. And we do this because these are plugins that we consider essential to the Capacitor experience, right? Everybody uses them, everybody needs them. So the one that we're adding today is an official Google Maps integration for Capacitor. This has kind of been a missing piece in the Capacitor ecosystem that enterprises and our community members have been asking for a long time. We need a good solution for Google Maps. It's necessary. People who are on Cordova who want to move to Capacitor, they can't because there's no Google Maps and they need that. Right. And so we took a step back and we looked at the ecosystem and we said, we need this to succeed. And so to do that, we have taken on the role of building this integration and building it as part of the open source Capacitor platform. So this is great because this means it's open source, so it's available to everyone. This is not something that's just for enterprises. Everyone will get access to this. Again, with it being open source as part of Capacitor, developers can contribute to this as well. We have lots of great features planned for this. The big one on the books that I think most people will be excited about is scrolling support. If you've used a Google Maps plugin in the past, you'll know that you can't really scroll the maps with the page. That's just kind of a limitation of how they work. And our engineers behind the scenes have been hard at work working to enable that functionality for this plugin. So there's lots of really great behaviors that we're looking forward to. And I think the community as a whole is going to benefit greatly from this being a new Capacitor core plugin.
That sounds really exciting, Dallas. When can people get their hands on this and start playing with it?
Yeah, so if you go look at the Capacitor plugins repo, there's a branch for it for anyone who wants to go try it out as we're finishing up development. It's still and I'd probably consider it a beta stage. We're still finishing up some features, getting everything polished. So we would be expecting to do a full general availability release in the coming weeks and months, but it should be coming here in the near term. Yeah.
That's awesome to hear. Since you opened up the topic of integrations, as Max alluded to earlier, we know that a number of our enterprise customers use Capacitor for their cross-platform app development and deployment. What are some of the most used integrations that you see out there, and what do you like to talk to people about?
Yeah, absolutely. So, this is another focus of the web native team is, enabling enterprises to be successful. And that means building integrations with specific enterprise focused solutions. We just released a Zebra integration that allows you to integrate with the Zebra Android scanners using their data wedge API. So this is a huge win for large logistics companies who are doing inventory management, and so this allows them to easily build with Capacitor. We've also built with Microsoft Intune. Mobile device management, mobile application management, these are important concepts in the enterprise space, and enterprises really care about this. And so we have, taken that need for them and built this integration to enable them to build with Capacitor. Other solutions, Google and Apple Pay, right? These are important for being able to collect transactions from your customers, which again is vital to an enterprise business, as well as Couchbase Lite. There are a lot of benefits that come from using an extremely high-powered database like Couchbase Lite in your mobile application that enterprises are looking to take advantage of. And so we build these integrations to support them.
That's a lot of integrations you talked about for enterprise. Really exciting for anybody that hasn't jumped into that yet. All right, so we talked about what's going on and what you've got released. Let's look a little further into the future. What can people expect this year? What do you see coming out? I'm going to ask the same question as Liam. We had V6 come out. Sounds like maybe there's an update you might want to tease.
Yeah, so the big news on the horizon is Capacitor 4. We are hard at work, heads down, working on Capacitor 4. And a lot of what this is going to be is just an incremental update. Like, there are lots of great features planned as well, but unlike the Capacitor 3, which kind of rewrote a lot of how plugins worked and required some updates from the community to maintain compatibility, Capacitor 4 is focused strictly on coming up to date with Android and iOS as they release their new versions every year, making sure that we support the latest build SDKs, items like that. And so that's really what Capacitor 4 is targeted on, and we're looking at that sometime later in Q2, Q3 of this year.
Okay.
Yeah. Outside of that, additionally, there is one other big announcement that I'd like to make. For the community, we have been working on a new Visual Studio Code extension for Capacitor projects. And we're really excited to release this to the community today as a way to go and work with Capacitor in your projects. A lot of people are familiar with the command line tooling that Capacitor provides, and it is a leaps and bounds beyond other alternatives that you can use with its simplicity and how it works. This Visual Studio Code extension takes that simplicity a step further. You can just use your editor to click buttons in your IDE to build your application, to run packages, run commands for your application. You can install plugins through this way. You can quickly see a synopsis of your application and see what plugins are out of date, what needs to be done. It also comes with a really unique feature of helping developers understand how to migrate from Cordova to Capacitor. So if you're a developer who's in that situation and you want to go from Cordova to Capacitor and you're just not sure where to start or what that'll look like, you can install this extension, run it on, open your project with this extension, and it will tell you everything that needs to be done in order to make that migration successful. So this is a brand new project that we're spinning up, and so it's in its very first release. But we're really excited for all of the features that it already has, and we're excited for the features that are going to be coming from that as well.
So it sounds like you're teasing this. When can people get their hands on this VS Code extension? Yeah,
it's available right now. So we are officially launching this today to the community. Again, this is another open plugin that's available to everyone to go use, and it's just there to help developers using Capacitor be successful. Just increasing that tool set that you have available at your fingertips.
You snuck one past me. That's a good one. I'm happy to be able to launch that today. Very cool for the community. Dallas, I really appreciate the update. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I mean, we're just really excited here to be working on Capacitor and to be supporting all the developers. And, we're grateful to the community for the support they continue to give us.
Thanks so much. That's Dallas James, product manager for the Web Native team. We'll see you soon, Dallas. All right, so we've touched Ionic framework, the Web Native team. We're going to jump over and talk a little bit about portals. I know Max mentioned a lot about it in the beginning, but I want to dive a little bit deeper. And so on the line with us today, we've got Josh Thomas, product manager for portals. Hey, Josh.
Hello. How's it going?
I've got to ask, it's kind of strange. I know Ionic's history and where it's sat in the past. Are you a bit of an outcast because you work on more of the native side of things?
Well, do you want to speak about Ionic's history or my history, right? Because my history is also as a web developer since like 2007.
Right.
I would say that in my role on the team, it's really important because as a product manager, it's important to have empathy for the users of your product.
Right.
And with all of that history I have around web development, I think it makes it a much better fit having a web developer being very involved in this process, because we're building products for native developers, but we're empowering web developers and the ability for them to contribute to these applications.
I'm just I'm just joshing with you, obviously, but it's good that you got that. I had to throw it in there. Before we get a little bit deeper, all right, so explain to me, what exactly are portals? What is the new thing we're diving into?
Sure. So portals is a way of embedding web applications into native apps that are built with Swift, Java, Kotlin, Objective-C. And I think Max touched on this a little bit earlier, but it's not just about including them in an application, but empowering more teams to be able to contribute to native applications where they probably haven't been able to in the past.
That's really interesting. Okay, thanks for the quick summary. I'm going to dive right into it. What's new with portals? What's going on?
Live updates. So integration with Appflow. I think portals by itself is a really interesting product. But when you include the ability to have live updates, it gets a lot more interesting, right? So micro front ends are cool, and the ability to have multiple teams contribute is great.
Right.
But allowing those teams to have their own release cycles and being able to work and deploy independently, that's what live updates brings to the table for portals. It's a really exciting opportunity for teams.
When we've discussed micro front end architecture, sounds like you're giving them now a superpower to build and deploy in parallel.
Yes, it's the next step in the product for sure.
I'm trying to wrap my head around it. Could you, without divulging too many details, could you give a real world concrete example of how a team is using portals today?
Sure. We've actually worked with an organization who is using portals in an app that's been around in the company for a long time. I don't want to give too many details because I don't have permission, but they actually embedded a web view into an existing native application that was built with Swift. And they talked a little bit with their customers about it and with their internal stakeholders, but they didn't tell them specifically how the technology that was being used to build the portal was.
Interesting.
And they took the app to the partners and showed it to them, and they said the experience was great. And then they divulged later that it was actually all web tech built into a native application, and they were able to develop it in a much shorter timeline than what they had anticipated. So I think that was a big celebration among that project and that team. And it's great from my role, right? Hearing customers tell us those things, being able to do something that they didn't realize was possible. It's always a fun opportunity to hear those things.
That's exciting. Thank you for that example. I think that'll hopefully let people's imaginations run as to what's possible with portals.
Sure.
Looking forward now, 2022, what do you have on the docket after live updates? That's super exciting. I know we're going to talk more about that soon, but what's next? What should people expect from portals?
So when we released portals, it was really for allowing web developers to contribute to native applications, right? Native meaning native languages. What we didn't anticipate was a lot of interest from people not working in native languages. So people that had existing capacitor applications and people who had React Native applications even. A lot of customers came out of the woodwork and told us that, yes, this is cool, but why isn't this for us? Right. So we're looking to make portals work in capacitor and portals for React Native, which are both projects we're actively working on right now. So think about the ability to enable more web developers and more teams to be able to contribute independently to your existing capacitor apps or to a React Native application. I think it's a really exciting technology, and I'm very excited to be involved in it.
Portals everywhere. I love it. It sounds like a lot of
portals all the way down.
That's right. Portals all the way down. Thanks so much, Josh. Is there anything else you'd like to add for the community?
No, I think we'll be talking more about React Native and portals for capacitor. And if anyone is interested in reaching out and talking with us about that, please do so. It's ionic.io/portals.
Thanks so much, Josh. That's Josh Thomas, product manager of Ionic Portals. Thank you for being here. We'll touch base with you in a couple of weeks. All right. And then last team we're going to round this out with is one most of you should know pretty well, but we have Matt Necko, product manager of Ionic Appflow. And there we go.
Hey. It's
Matt, welcome to the other side of the screen. Matt's our newest product manager on the team.
Woo! I'm stoked. exciting to be
Thanks
here.
so much
Yeah.
for being here. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Let's kind of jump into it. Appflow, what's going on? What's new?
Yeah. Love it. Get right into it. Well, if in case you're not aware, Appflow is Ionic's mobile CI/CD service built for primarily focused on teams and businesses, helping them to scale up their continuous integration and continuous delivery processes, especially when, as you can imagine, when you're building dozens or hundreds of apps, managing all that across teams, perhaps also with maybe dozens or hundreds of developers at scale, and keeping your shipping cadence and quality of work really up at a high level is incredibly challenging. And so what Appflow ultimately exists to let you do is to work better together as a team and have one place to manage all of your applications, your Ionic, Cordova, and Capacitor apps, and build, deploy, and automate those processes for you. And let's start off with something really exciting that I'm just so pumped to announce. So this comes directly from some community feedback for what we've heard over the a bit of time here, which is, as I mentioned, Appflow traditionally has been focused on serving teams, larger teams and businesses, and as part of kind of our enterprise suite of products. And what we had some honest feedback from the community is that there's some really wonderful features here that we would love to use, and they don't always feel accessible to us from a pricing perspective and just onboarding and things like that. And so we've really taken that to heart. And so what I'm excited to announce today is that we're rolling out 2 new plans. One is for indies called the Community Plan, and that allows you to get access to the majority of the core features of Appflow, like native builds, to be able to build your app in the cloud and deploy that to the App Store. And then we also have for startups, so businesses that are, really trying to, hit the ground running and provide that competitive edge in this landscape that we have today, where increasingly we have to build and ship and react to customer feedback really quickly. Appflow can help you with that with our CI/CD tools. And so we have a new startup plan as well that unlocks every feature of Appflow across native builds, live updates, and our automation features to tie in and build complex workflows. And in addition, tying back to our pal Dallas, we have access to some of our native solutions as well bundled in there, like Auth Connect, Identity Vault, Secure Storage, and Ionic Payments for collecting Google Pay and Apple Pay payments from customers. So it's a really, really fabulous offering that we're providing for both sides of our community here. And so I'm really excited to roll that out and hope you all check that out if you fall into that bucket.
That sounds great. And for those who might not have seen it, click the link just below if you're curious in any of the new plans that Matt has mentioned here. I'm going to touch on something because you mentioned Appflow is a CI/CD solution that we provide a lot of cool tools and integrations. But I'm sure you must come up with companies who are nervous about working with a managed solution that's not a part of them, and that's usually a security concern. What has Appflow been doing to address that concern?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially as, again, when you're trusting us with your applications in their entirety, their source code, their environments, their secrets, everything that is required to build modern apps these days. Yeah, that can be a big concern, right? It's a lot of trust that we have to build up and maintain for you, especially for larger companies. So that security always has been a focus for us, but we're really doubling down on it in a broader perspective this year to address some of concerns that we've seen and some another area of great feedback. The first one is we're in a handful of months here, we're going to be rolling out a secure live updates option for our enterprises. And just a quick note on what live updates are is I would say it's our most popular feature today, because it allows you to take your web builds, your Ionic app, the actual application, so your HTML, CSS, JavaScript, images, and other files, and deploy updates to those on your users' iOS and Android devices without by bypassing the app store. So without having to go through the app store review. And as you can imagine, the benefits there are many, including A/B testing, shipping, just a smaller subset of users, fixing my favorite and I think most important use cases, shipping mission critical bug fixes or new features quickly. So if you find something in the same day, you're no longer hampered or down in the store for hours or days because you can fix things immediately, which is what happens with app development, right? Bugs slip in, that's natural. So it's perhaps again our most popular feature. And the challenge there is today a lot of the in fact all of the infrastructure that is used is Ionics. So meaning you connect your source code repos, we build the web builds in our cloud. And for some customers that are more security conscious, they wanted some different options around that. And so what essentially Secure Live Updates will do is a bunch of different options around that, the ability to open up live updates to other companies that frankly, many of them are just incredibly excited and want to use it, but because of legal and other policies, they literally hands are tied. And that's just part of it, right? Of being security conscious. So that's not a bad thing. And so ultimately what it's going to allow you to do is upload and run your own web builds on your infrastructure if you'd like, and then send them to your users' devices using some of our plugin infrastructure to then validate and make sure that they're being sent encrypted and decrypted, appropriately. And so that you can make sure that the code and updates haven't been tampered with on the way. Yeah,
that's really cool. That sounds like something enterprises will be clamoring for pretty soon.
Yeah, definitely. And then the other aspect that kind of just a brief mention is SOC 2 compliance. So this is not something that you'll see as a feature rolling out, but is more about how validating that we take your user privacy, your code privacy seriously, which of course we always have. We have the best in class security setup in our infrastructure. But what's great about getting audited with the SOC 2 process, it's a third party audit and really validates and proves that we're as secure as we say we are. So it's a very common industry step, this audit process. So we're going through that in the coming months. And it's just kind of like another seal of approval to businesses that Appflow is a great SaaS service to use and you can trust in it.
Yeah, sounds like Appflow is growing up. It's going to get its diploma pretty soon.
It is like a new grow up process and our child grow. Yep, having been around for a few years. Yeah.
What can people expect to see from Appflow in the coming months? You've got SOC 2 on your horizon, but what else can you tease our audience just a little bit or give them some insight what you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say, of course, 2022 and beyond is absolutely a huge security focus for us, as those two I mentioned. And so nothing to announce just yet, but think of, more in the realm of that focus for teams and businesses. We're going to be doubling down, as I said. And additionally, we're constantly looking at user experience improvements, ways to enhance especially our native builds and live updates this year, looking at performance and other types of just everything that is on the table in terms of making that experience better. So stay tuned. We've got lots of things planned.
Awesome. I'm pretty excited to hear more about that, but it sounds like I need to pick your brain a little bit more in the coming months to see what comes out. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Matt?
Yeah. I would say again, given this renewed vigor around customer experience and wanting to do everything we can to make the Appflow experience great for you all, I'd invite you to check out the link we're going to show here. Book a meeting with me. I'd love to hear how your experience is going using Appflow. And so please reach out. I want to know what's missing, what your favorite aspects of it are. Everything's on the table. So definitely reach out or connect with me on Twitter. Either way, it'd be great. Thank you, Vivek.
Thanks so much. That's Matt Necko, product manager of Ionic Appflow. And yeah, let's close this out. Let's talk to Max, because we just went through a lot of information and you can hear the product team is running on all cylinders. A lot of exciting things they're working on. We're going to let them get back to it because they're super busy. Max, I got to ask you, you talked about some trends you're excited about this year, but do you have any insights on what else is on the horizon? What are some large scope things Ionic might be working on?
Yeah, well, one of the biggest things, and if you pay attention to the blog, you've probably got a hint of this. But one of the big things that we're doing this year is focusing on testing, and specifically end-to-end testing. And if you aren't familiar with end-to-end testing, the basic idea is, instead of unit tests, which are low level, they test like a single function and the data that you send to the function and get back. Integration tests are kind of a step above that, maybe test APIs and databases. In end-to-end test, the idea is you're testing the actual app that users are going to sit down and use. That's going to be in the App Store, at least ideally. And that's kind of one of the best ways to make sure that when you actually ship your app to the App Store, it actually works. And of course, if you're using Appflow's live updates, that's you can fix bugs that you do introduce even after you ship. But if you aren't, then you have to wait for that painful multi-day review process to make sure you fixed a pretty serious issue. So avoid shipping bugs to production by investing in end-to-end testing. And so we are working on a bunch of things in that space. So I published a blog post earlier this year that introduced a reference app, a example app that has what we consider to be best practices for building out end-to-end tests on Ionic and Capacitor or Cordova. And that example was actually put together in collaboration with some of the projects that lead up this space. So we've decided to go all in on 2 projects for end-to-end testing on the front end. WebDriver IO, which is this awesome Node.js based test automation framework. You can test anything with it, web apps, mobile apps, desktop apps. And then we use that with Appium, which is a mobile test automation tool. And the WebDriver folks actually helped us design that test app and make sure that it was following their best practices. And I want to thank them for that. So the reasons we're making a big push into testing is, as we sat down and talked with teams that were building really large, serious apps, testing, end-to-end testing in particular, was one of their number one things they struggled with. And so much so that 40% of people that we talked to weren't doing any end-to-end testing at all. And some of them were just doing like some basic manual testing, which is basically, here's a script, go through the app manually, click these buttons, and make sure it works. And that obviously doesn't scale. That's not automated testing. You can't do that as part of your CI/CD workflow. And so we realized that our connection and knowledge on the front end and on the cloud side too, actually gave us a really unique opportunity to build a good full stack end-to-end testing experience that is actually fun to use, that isn't a nightmare to configure and is easy to set up on the cloud side. So we rolled out the example as like a first test of like, kind of, here's where we're going. We want feedback. The feedback's been really good. We're making the next step into actually working on a cloud end-to-end testing experience inside of our Appflow cloud product, where you'll be able to automatically run tests on different devices, simulators, emulators, real devices in the future, and integrate that as part of your CI/CD workflow. And of course, we have all these great integrations with services like Azure DevOps or Bitbucket, et cetera. So you can perform these tests directly from your CI/CD workflow. And then we help you actually, with best practices and some future tools we're working on, to actually make designing the tests a lot easier and configuring the local testing environment to make it as painless as possible. So that's something I'm really, really excited about. If you're interested in that, we are going to be putting up a link for a early access form. So fill out that form, and we would love to get in touch and learn about how you're doing end-to-end testing today, how we can help, but definitely enter your info on that form to be one of the first to know when we roll that out.
That's awesome, Max. Thanks so much. Anything else to add? What would you like to sign off with the community?
Well, first of all, I want to say it's fun to do a informal Ionic show like this. One of the reasons we decided to do this, as you said, is like everyone's really busy, and we'd rather put the time into building product that makes your lives easier than to practice presentations, right? So doing an informal talk like this, and also there's something nice about the informal nature. You just get a little more kind of you get a little some subtlety, and you see how people are when they aren't just rehearsing from a script. So I love that. I'm glad we decided to do that again. I would just say that, you know, the community as a whole, like, things have never been stronger. We're seeing like a really exciting kind of renaissance in mobile and cross-platform in general. Like, I think web developers as a whole in 2022, there's some kind of new energy I'm noticing where we just have such great tools coming out all the time. We've got all these ways to build really incredible apps. And there's this whole new generation of people who are asking the question, like, okay, I can build web apps, I can build desktop apps. What about mobile? And they're starting to realize, like, oh, I can use Capacitor and Ionic, and I don't have to learn anything new. I can use my favorite libraries that I already use on the web. I can basically, just like Electron lets me build desktop apps, I can do the same with Capacitor and optionally the Ionic UI components for mobile. And that's been really exciting. That, like I said, Capacitor has been absolutely taking off. I think we've really struck a chord there, and I'm excited to see where it goes. And I think some of the best days are ahead for this technology and for Ionic as a whole. So I want to thank the community for being awesome, for building such cool stuff, and stay in touch and stay tuned for all the awesome stuff that we've got coming for you this year.
That's fantastic. Thanks so much, Max, for being here and giving us the update. Thanks to all the Ionic product managers as well. And thank you, the audience, for attending. We're going to catch up with everybody about 9 weeks on May 25th for IonicConf. I think we're going to throw a link here right now, but the call for papers is open. So take a look and submit if you have an interesting topic. We're looking for any types of talks or presentations ranging from Ionic and Capacitor to cross-platform design to mixing web and native, or any other cool topics you want to talk about. We're looking for presentations to be right around the 30-minute length, but we're also going to select a couple of 10-minute lightning talks for this event. So please submit your call for papers. Don't be afraid of any crazy ideas you have. And we'd love to see you there at IonicConf in May. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll talk soon.